September 21st, 1998.
Mr. President, you understand that your testimony here today is under oath?
I do.
An unprecedented day in history. The president's videotape testimony on the Lewinsky affair is played unedited to the nation.
If Monica Lewinsky says that while you were in the Oval Office area, you touched her breast, would she be lying?
That is not my recollection. My recollection is that I did not have sexual relations with Ms. Lewinsky, and I'm staying on my former statement about that.
4 hours of questioning by Kenneth Starr's prosecutors.
Do you agree with me that the statement, "I was never alone with her," is incorrect? You were alone with Monica Lewinsky, weren't you?
Well, it depends on how you define alone.
And some very careful answers by the president.
The statement that there was no sex of any kind, in any manner, shape, or form with President Clinton was an utterly false statement. Is that correct?
It depends upon what the meaning of the word is. Yes.
Tonight, under oath, will it help or hurt the president's case?
From ABC News, this is a Nightline Special Edition. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
On this day, perhaps more than ever before in our history, we became a nation of voyeurs, watching with a mixture of fascination and horror as the President of the United States variously answered and evaded prosecutors' questions before a federal grand jury here in Washington on a videotape recorded on August 17th. Some of you will have seen the whole session, which has already been broadcast and rebroadcast in its entirety on various television outlets. Most of you have seen at least excerpts. We, too, will be broadcasting some of those tonight. But we're also going to try to put today's events into the broader context provided by the more than 3,100 pages of evidence collected by Kenneth Starr's office and released today with that videotape by the House Judiciary Committee. This story, after all, has evolved over the past 8 months, most especially in the manner that the president has responded to the initial charge that he and a White House intern had been engaged in a sexual relationship. Mr. Clinton's first reply was delivered on January 21st in an interview with Jim Lehrer.
There is no improper relationship, and I intend to cooperate with this inquiry.
And after subsequent questions had been raised about the president's careful use of the present tense, as in, there is no relationship, there was what sounded like this categorical denial on January 26th.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky.
A few days earlier, on January 22nd, there had been this suggestion that the president would tell us everything he could as soon as he could.
I'd like for you to have more rather than less, sooner rather than later.
On February 6th, at a joint news conference with British Prime Minister Tony Blair, President Clinton gave what would be his last substantive word on the issue for months to come.
What I'm doing is going on with my work and cooperating with the investigation. And I do not believe I should answer specific questions. I don't think that's the right thing to do now.
Indeed, from that moment on, the president left it to his wife, his cabinet, aides, and friends to reiterate the denials.
But I can state unequivocally that, as my husband has said, these are false allegations.
The president has emphatically denied that anything improper happened.
It is a fact that when the president first heard these allegations, he denied them.
While that campaign was being waged in public, a bitter private exchange was being waged between the president's lawyer, David Kendall, and Robert Bittman of Kenneth Starr's office. It began cordially enough on February 2nd, Bittman to Kendall, quote, "You indicated in our conversation that you would get back to me as to whether the president will testify. The grand jury awaits the president's decision. Please advise me as soon as possible what the president decides." Another letter 2 days later from Bittman formally requesting the president to testify, and another on February 9th with another request. On February 13th, the president's lawyer responds with a shot across the bow, quote, I was unable to respond to your February 4th invitation because I was in the process of dealing with the prejudicial and false leaks of information about your investigation. The President, Mr. Kendall goes on, has the greatest respect for the grand jury. However, under the circumstances, it is impossible to accept this invitation. The situation in Iraq continues to be dangerously volatile, and this has demanded much of the President's time and attention, end quote. In late February and early March, 2 more invitations to testify are issued to the President through his lawyer. But Mr. Kendall replies that he's just not getting enough time with the President. Quote, accordingly, he will, on our advice, not be able to accept your invitation for him to testify at this time. Robert Bittman, March 13th. We mean no disrespect, but since the Monica Lewinsky matter began, the President has found time to play golf, attend basketball games and political fundraisers, and enjoy a ski vacation. And so it goes, back and forth, 6 requests for the President to testify, all of them turned down. State visits to South Africa and South America, preparation time, study, analysis. It is not until July 17th when Mr. Bittman advises Mr. Kendall that he is issuing a subpoena for the President that Mr. Clinton's lawyer becomes more accommodating, still asking, though, for a little more time. By July 24th, David Kendall writes that the President will testify, but gives 5 pages of conditions. 2 days later, July 26th, the news breaks that Monica Lewinsky's lawyers are close to an immunity deal with the independent counsel. July 28th, Lewinsky signs that deal. July 29th, ABC's Jackie Judd reports the existence of the now infamous blue dress. 2 days later, the President's lawyer is notified that the office of the independent counsel wishes to obtain a blood sample from the President, which he provides on August 3rd. August 17th, the President testifies, and that evening, for the first time in 7 months, modifies the story of his relationship with Monica Lewinsky.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate. In fact, it was wrong. It constituted a critical lapse in judgment and a personal failure on my part for which I am solely and completely responsible.
And then today, we saw what preceded that television address. We have asked 2 of our Nightline correspondents to extract from the President's videotape testimony what may be most helpful to him in the ongoing battle in the House Judiciary Committee, and also what may be harmful to him. Chris Bury begins with what could be most damaging.
Ted, perhaps the most damaging part of the televised testimony is just the very picture of the President of the United States manipulating words, shaving language, and evading questions. And nowhere does the President slice the dictionary more carefully than on questions involving sex. But his verbal gymnastics in some cases clearly backfire, causing the independent counsel, at least, to conclude the President not only perjured himself in the Paula Jones case, but even more significantly, lied before the grand jury as well.
Seconds after swearing to tell the whole truth, the President begins his testimony by reading a statement designed to avoid answering specific embarrassing questions.
When I was alone with Miss Lewinsky on certain occasions in early 1996 and once in early 1997, I engaged in conduct that was wrong. These encounters did not consist of sexual intercourse. They did not constitute sexual relations as I understood that term to be defined at my January 17, 1998 deposition.
According to the Star report, the very first sentence in the President's statement is flatly contradicted by the evidence.
Monica, you have sexual relations with the President.
Monica Lewinsky testifies that their sexual relationship begins earlier, November 15, 1995, and that she performs oral sex on him 3 times that year. In their first meeting, according to her testimony, as cited in the Star report, the President tugged on the pink intern pass hanging from her neck and said that it might be a problem. According to Star, the President made a false statement to the grand jury because the President was unwilling to admit sexual activity with a young 22-year-old White House intern in the Oval Office area. Again and again, President Clinton and the prosecutors sparred over the definition of sex.
I believe that the common understanding of the term, if you say two people are having a sexual relationship, most people believe that includes intercourse.
But the definition of sex in the Jones case is critical to the question of perjury. Quote, a person engages in sexual relations when the person knowingly engages in or causes contact with the genitalia, anus, groin, breast, inner thigh, or buttocks of any person with an intent to arouse or gratify the sexual desire of any person.
My question is oral sex performed on you within that definition as you understood it?
As I understood it, it was not, no.
Later, an apparently incredulous grand juror has the prosecutor ask the president this question.
Why it is that you think that oral sex performed on you does not fall within the definition of sexual relations as used in your deposition?
Because that is, if the deponent is the person who has oral sex performed on him, then the contact is with, not with anything on that list, but with the lips of another person. It seems to me self-evident that that's what it is.
What about the statement of his own lawyer, Bob Bennett, during the Jones deposition, citing Lewinsky's affidavit? Quote, there is absolutely no sex of any kind, in any manner, shape, or form with President Clinton. Here, the president's defense hangs on a grammar lesson.
Well, actually, in the present tense, that's an accurate statement. That was an accurate statement.
And later?
It depends upon what the meaning of the word is.
Yes.
If is means is and never has been, that's one thing. If it means there is none, that was a completely true statement.
The president perjured himself before the grand jury, according to Starr, when he said he could not remember or refused to answer specific allegations based on Monica Lewinsky's testimony. She swears under oath that on 9 occasions, President Clinton touched or kissed her breasts, and on 4 occasions, stimulated her genitals.
The question is, if Monica Lewinsky says that while you were in the Oval Office area, you touched her breasts, would she be lying?
That is not my recollection. My recollection is that I did not have sexual relations with Miss Lewinsky, and I'm staying on my former statement about that.
If she
my statement is that I did not have sexual relations as defined by that.
If she says that you kissed her breasts, would she be lying?
I'm going to revert to my former statement.
Okay. If Monica Lewinsky says that while you were in the Oval Office area, you touched her genitalia, would she be lying? And that calls for a yes, no, or reverting to your former statement.
I will revert to my statement on that.
If Monica Lewinsky says that you used a cigar as a sexual aid with her in the Oval Office area, would she be lying? Yes, no, or won't answer?
I will revert to my former statement.
The president is also careful to a fault when asked under oath about whether he coached the testimony of his personal secretary, Betty Curry, concerning his relationship with Lewinsky. According to the Star report, the president said to her in succession, you were always there when she was there, right? We were never really alone. You could see and hear everything. Monica came on to me, and I never touched her, right?
What information were you trying to get from her when you said, I was never alone with her, right?
I don't remember exactly what I did say with her. That's what you say I said.
If Miss Curry testified to that she says you told her, I was never alone with her, right?
Well, I was never alone with her.
Did you not say that, Mr. President?
Mr. Goodman, just a minute. I was never alone with her, right, might be a question. And what I might have meant by that is in the Oval Office complex.
On this video, the president's reluctance to answer certain questions, his semantical hair-splitting, and his tortured definitions of sex provide the clearest case yet why leading Democrats in Congress refuse to embrace such a legalistic defense. In fact, a new line of argument has emerged from Mr. Clinton's most loyal supporters, that even if the president committed perjury before the grand jury on questions of sex, That does not amount to an impeachable offense. Ted?
Chris Perjury, from another perspective, the president may have helped himself today. That when we come back.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by MasterCard.